Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
This week, one lawmaker describes efforts between businesses and higher education to place graduates in tough-to-fill jobs. Plus, Governor Walz and a DFL lawmaker promote policies to avert climate change. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. As chair of the Higher Education Committee, Senator Paul Anderson toured the Iron Range and areas surrounding the Twin Cities this fall to learn more about the ways of preparing and training today's students for tomorrow's workforce needs through partnerships between businesses and higher education. He joins me now to talk more about it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
What are the challenges facing businesses today in terms of finding workers, and how does it vary by region?
Well, we have record low unemployment. We've got a great economy in many aspects, but really what's happening around the state of Minnesota and all the regions are a lack of workforce. And so this was an opportunity for us to go out and talk with these communities, from the higher education sector to the business community to the local Chamber of Commerce, and really find out what's working, what's not, what they need help with. And it was really fascinating what we found out.
The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Manufacturing Association, and the Minnesota Business Partnership were all with you on these tours. Why is it now so important for higher education to work with businesses?
Well, I think you're seeing in this ever-changing economy, you're talking about technology advancements, you're talking about innovation that's just outpacing what government can do. And in the higher education sector, we need to really be prepared from the employer's perspective of what they need now, not 6 months from now, a year from now, because things are changing so fast. So it's imperative that we bring the business communities, the chambers, the partnership, and those institutions into the discussion to lead us into what they need in the workforce. Not just let higher education or government tell the business sector what they need. And that's, I think, a changing course as things change so fast in our industries, that we really need to be on the front end, not the back end responding. We need to be flexible enough to get ahead of the game.
So trying to get a dialogue between the business and the educators.
Exactly.
And it's different than how it has been done.
It is, and I think this is a very intentional effort, and we don't want to discount the great work that's being done at the higher education system, because it's really imperative as well. But in this case, if the employers, if the businesses don't have the workforce that's trained and ready to go once they exit training, and this might not just be those students coming out of high school into career and technical schools, these might be aging learners, they might be returning to the workforce. There's all these different pockets of people, but they have to be ready, they have to be competent in their trade and ready to hit the ground running, and that's the imperative thing. If businesses have to sit and spend 6 months to a year retraining these employees, that doesn't do them any good. So they need the workers ready to go to hit the ground running.
So college-bound students of all ages, as you said, not just the typical 18-year-olds, can apply for workforce development scholarships in the areas of advanced manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare services, information technology, early childhood education, and transportation at any of the 30 state colleges of the Minnesota state system, thanks to an appropriation from the legislature. So what is the goal?
Yeah, well, the goal here is to make sure those students that they can identify these areas to go into. And now picture yourself in Thief River Falls or at Northland Community College or different areas of the state that may need, let's say up in Thief River Falls, they need more manufacturing than another area of the state. They can identify high school students or other people in the community that they can bring in and give these scholarships to that might not otherwise be able to afford school, or just enhance their opportunities to go to these schools, keep them in their own regions, which is really important as well, and then get that training to get really good jobs, good paying jobs, good benefits that would not receive the debt they would in going to a four-year institution. Now, I'm not saying we don't want to, we want to discourage students from going to four-year institutions, but there are a lot of students out there, or people that want to go get better jobs, different jobs in different industries, that would look at this as an opportunity, but for this scholarship, they wouldn't be able to do that. So we heard some great testimonies, some stories of students that have been able to maybe go to these schools that wouldn't have been able to take time away from work because they couldn't afford it, that have received those scholarships, and they'll be able to graduate in a year or two, and again, increase their livelihood, their quality of life enormously because of these opportunities.
Are higher educational institutions, are they flexible enough? Because, you know, faculty can have very long tenures. They can specialize in skills that, or ideas or philosophies that are changing or less relevant over time. Does higher education itself need to make some changes, both in its mission and practice, to train workers? I mean, you talked about the value of the traditional as we know it, but is it going to be two-pronged now? Yeah, it has to be more flexible. It just has to be for our economy of today and tomorrow. It has to be able to adapt and change much more than it has in the past. We can't wait for advisory committees to come together to produce curriculum based on jobs of years ago. We have to get ahead of things, and again, this is where those partnerships are critical, and we put some dollars in that in legislation to create those partnerships that really brings in the community champions, the business groups, and also higher education, all working together to make sure they're on the front end again, not just responding. So there's some urgency here. But is there a possibility, or are people concerned about the possibility that these pathways will be created and these workers will be trained, and then the market will change, or the businesses might relocate, or the needs might change, or more in artificial intelligence technology comes in? I mean, you're talking about how dynamic this is. This is very dynamic. It is, and that's the key thing, is we have to do something. We can't just sit back and let the industries dictate and then not have the ability to train them and anticipate. We might not get them all right, but if you look at those 6 sectors, again, as you mentioned, manufacturing, healthcare, IT, ag, early childhood, and transportation. There's a couple others that after this trip I'd like to add. Hospitality is one of them. Energy is another one. These are areas that are short workers. And you talk to some of these industries, 20 to 30%, they are waiting. They can do more work. They can produce more economic growth for our state and our regions, but they don't have the workforce. And if we don't prepare those, they have to be transferable skills. I think that's the key going forward, is a lot of these elements will provide the platform for them to get these jobs, but then ongoing training within the businesses is up to them, and also in coordination with our career and technical schools. But this is something that we have to get flexibility. We have to put these things on the forefront and make sure we're, again, getting ahead of the game and not behind, because once again, businesses will not be able to survive or even grow or even stay in business if we don't have the pipeline of talent to support those jobs. Senator Anderson, thank you so much. Thanks, Shannon.
Governor Tim Walz announced the creation of a climate change sub-cabinet as well as an advisory council on climate change.
We know that climate change threatens the very things that make Minnesota a great place to live, from our magnificent 10,000 lakes to our farmable land and clean air. Climate change is no longer a far-off possibility, as Minnesotans across our state are suffering through its devastating effects right now, and it will only continue to get worse. We must protect Minnesota's way of life by putting our state at the forefront of finding innovative solutions to climate change. That's why today I'm signing an executive order to establish a climate change sub-cabinet to advise this administration on policies to combat climate change. This climate change sub-cabinet will identify policies and implement strategies that will help Minnesota reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions. By working collaboratively with commissioners across agencies and the public, we'll better achieve solutions around climate change. This is about being intentional and operational. Policies and strategies to make sure that the state is not only addressing emissions, but resiliencies are built into everything that we do. Because of the devastating effects of climate change, we have to think about how we build our roads differently. We have to think about shoreline protection. We have to think about growing seasons, and we have to think about health impacts as temperatures change throughout the state.
policies to slow or even avert potential climate change are on the minds of Governor Walz and state lawmakers. This week, Governor Walz announced the creation of a climate change subcabinet and an advisory council. While in the House of Representatives, the Climate Action Caucus held another meeting. Joining me in the studio is the author of the Governor's Clean Energy Bill, Senator Nick Frentz. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
The Pew Research Center just released survey results that say on average 62% of U.S. adults believe climate change is affecting their local communities. In your view, how is Minnesota affected?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's good to see you again here in the interim. Minnesota's seeing the effects in several ways. I just came from the Minnesota Environmental Congress, which by luck was held in Mankato today. About 400 Minnesotans and the governor talking about the ways climate change is affecting us. Where I live, agriculture is the primary driver of the economy. We have flooding, we have heat, and those are affecting our ability to grow and make farms profitable. We're also seeing the effects of climate change in the heat itself, which raises questions about how we're going to continue to power, how we're going to continue to have transportation, and what we're going to do if we aren't able to bend the curve back. Things that were predicted 20 years ago, which some Americans were skeptical of about climate change, are now proving to be, if not daily occurrences, frequent. And while Minnesota doesn't have hurricanes, some of those same things are going to start affecting us more and more rapidly. And to those that said 20 years ago, I think this is not real, I would say, my view is that the science is fairly well settled. And while we can argue about the opinions of different legislators and Minnesotans, you're entitled to your own opinion, not entitled to your own facts.
To get into some specifics here,
Sure.
Last session, Senator David Sengen was chief author of a bill called Clean Energy First, which has been incorporated into an aspect of the governor's clean energy proposal. It would make it harder for power companies to add new fossil fuel energy sources. It would also fortify a preference for green technology. The Senate worked on the bill last session. The House had a similar version. So there's bipartisan support. Something is coming together. What's your view on this clean energy first part?
Well, first of all, I work with Senator Sengen. He and I also traveled as part of a delegation to Germany 2 summers ago to study their renewable energy. They're way ahead of us. I support the spirit of clean energy first. As you may know, the governor's bill breaks into 3 pretty bite-sized pieces: carbon-free energy production by 2050, optimization, which is the encouraging of municipals, investor-owned utilities, and co-ops to efficiency means, and then clean energy first, which is to tell the Public Utilities Commission, let's create a preference for renewables, wind and solar, and work in combination to make a plan so that we're going to reduce fossil fuel burning, reduce carbon emissions, and hopefully mitigate the effects of climate change. Long story short, Shannon, those efforts that Senator Sengen made and those parts of the governor's bill and his bill, those are good things, and we should continue to work on them.
Another prong of the governor's approach is the 100% clean power by 2050. And now he's created a subcabinet and an advisory council to work towards that. But critics are saying that this is heavy-handed and may result in significantly higher energy costs. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, I saw the press conference yesterday, and so now the executive branch has a climate clean energy cabinet. The House has got a climate clean energy cabinet. Kind of makes us in the Senate a little bit jealous. Stay tuned on those questions about the Senate. As you talk about mandates and whether they're heavy-handed, you must establish what is the cost of our present trajectory. And if you followed the United Nations report from 48 hours ago, there's a large number of scientists who say even on our present path, we're going to see worse and worse results, worse and worse outcomes, worse and worse property damage, worse and worse natural events if we don't take a more serious approach. And to those critics that talk about mandates, I'd say it's a simple balancing of not just the question of what will it cost, but what will it pay. And I think we'll have to take further steps. And I think Minnesotans in particular are saying, well, we've obviously got to do something.
I was on the U.S. Environmental Protection website looking at numbers about greenhouse gas emissions. The percentages are available from 2017. Electricity production accounted for 27.5%. Slightly greater contributor is transportation at 28.9%. So we're talking the burning of fossil fuels for cars, trucks, planes, trains. the way that we move ourselves and our commodities. What policies can help tackle this aspect?
Well, that's a great question. And from my seat on the Senate Transportation Committee, we had some testimony about our transition to electric vehicles, hybrids, and how we can make that affordable. You're seeing already a lot of discussion statewide about charging stations, about the ways that we can reduce emissions and still effectively provide transportation. One of my friends from Mankato commutes back and forth to the city, so 150 miles round trip, give or take. He said he drove 8,500 miles this summer in his electric vehicle, $300 total cost. So what we want people to understand is that there is a savings to this transition in addition to the climate benefits of not burning fossil fuels and not putting carbon into the air.
These changes, though, bring with them other challenges and new ways of living and building things. When you look at the third leading contributor of greenhouse gases, it is industry at 22%. In a tweet to Governor Walz, at Minnesota Miners said that Greater Minnesota needs good-paying jobs. Quote, "We want jobs, not California progressive policies." Might these policies aimed at reducing greenhouse gases cause job losses, not to mention just changes in how we live, which is, can be frightening?
Sure, it's a good question. And one of the things we'd like to think is that we're all in this together. So if it's going to affect one sector like mining, of course, more of a factor in northern Minnesota than agriculture where I live, it's got to be all together, one Minnesota. There are 11 states besides California that have enacted, for example, the Clean Cars Initiative. They have not seen a loss of jobs. They have not seen a hit to their economy. And you've probably heard this number before, but we estimate about 60,000 clean energy jobs in Minnesota right now. I thought we saw a study earlier this year that said the fastest growing job in Minnesota is solar installer and technician. So for the miners, I would say, you're our brothers and sisters. We don't want anything that's bad for you. We're all in this together, though, and we're going to create jobs and hopefully do it in a way that protects every part of the state and grows the economy.
Finally, the issue of whether climate change is caused by human behavior has become controversial. However, there are businesses now, like Cargill announced this week, who are making a commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. Other companies are taking their own actions. Without state and federal policies, won't the market eventually have to make its own adjustments to ensure continued profits?
Sure. Well, first of all, don't you just love the Minnesota companies that take the lead and do things that people want? I mean, that's what makes Minnesota great, is some of these companies that really show public interest at heart. So hats off to them. Second of all, your question is, won't the marketplace go there anyway? Good. Then these mandates will be of no harm. The only question about the marketplace going is if it doesn't go fast enough to reduce climate change, in which case the signal that the state will send about energy generation, about transportation, about efficiency will be necessary. You can look at a lot of different examples, but in the climate change debate, I think what these companies are saying is actually kind of a conservative philosophy, which is, hey, we have what some people think is a real risk out here to the state, to the country, and to the world. Let's address it right now aggressively. If it wasn't a real risk, fine, we created clean energy, we built windmills and solar, and we've done no harm. If it was a disaster waiting, and a lot of people think it is, we may have averted it and saved the planet for our children, our grandchildren, and everybody to come after that. And so for those companies, I think investing their own dollars, of course, that's a sign that they're pretty smart, and I think I agree with them that we need to move.
Senator Nick Frentz, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Good seeing you.
This week at the Capitol, the Legislative Task Force on Vehicle Registration began debating the best method to annually tax vehicle registrations.
Why in the heck don't we just do a flat rate and be on with it? Because it's going to simplify. We have 25 other states that are doing it. We're one of 7 that does value-based. Maybe that's an indication it doesn't work the best.
You guys seem to be kind of working almost under the assumption that everything stays exactly the way it is, and currently, including the current definition of base value in state law, when I think we have a consensus around this table that that's not workable and we're not going to stick with that.
Politically and personally, we're not going to get anything through the House that reduces the progressivity of our tabs. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So that's not a political solution that's going to work. So as we're looking at this today, can we just, as we move into the next 6 weeks of getting this done, can we take where we're at today and fix what has to be fixed?
We recognize the fact that we have a company here that has done every kind of scenario already. They already have code from just about every kind of scenario. Certainly contractually, they're doing the best they can, with the current law. But my understanding is that they've anticipated some of this.
If the decision was it's age-based, I'm not concerned one iota. If it's a massive hybrid of value and weight and age and this and flat and that, then I start to get a little more concerned. But if it is one that we have done before, so we have done age-based before, we have done flat rate before, even destination charge put aside, as we mentioned last time, even the current law and some of the things on there, we are actively building that and are now testing that for passenger vehicles. So unless we come up with something more complicated than what is there today, I'm pretty confident that we will be able to keep our schedule where it is at.
And Governor Walz was joined by Attorney General Keith Ellison for a press conference on vaping in Minnesota.
My job as Attorney General is to protect Minnesotans, especially the most vulnerable like our young people. It's my job to protect them from deceptive, fraudulent, and unlawful practices. It's my job to protect their health and their safety. And today, I'm announcing with all of us up here that we're using the power of the Minnesota Attorney General's office to bring a lawsuit against JUUL Labs on behalf of the state and the people of Minnesota.
Vapes became popular, and it was marketed as the safe alternative. And it seemed like that to me. That's what everyone was saying, so I bought into that.
Around freshman year, I started vaping, and I had no clue what was inside of it. I had no clue what I was inhaling, pretty much. When I initially had hit my first vape, I was just told that, it was nothing, it was better than a cigarette, it's better than other drugs.
And they will use their Merchant of Doubt playbook to tell us we're bad parents, to tell us we have bad kids, to tell us that we should have known, we told you, or how would we have known this was going to happen? I'll tell you how we know. We're going to get their research, and I'll damn sure guarantee you they had conversations talking about how do we get kids like Will addicted? How do we make sure Claire can't get off this? Because guess what? These kids aren't smoking cigarettes anymore. Trace back to who owns JUUL. There's a new name for big tobacco, and it's JUUL, and it's vaping. It's that simple.
Brian Pease of the Minnesota Historical Society offers insight into another state capitol feature in our series, The People's House.
The Minnesota State Capitol has been restored to its original grandeur, but this is not where the first legislature met. Where did they meet?
They met in the Central House, which would have been during the territorial years, 1849, and that was in downtown St. Paul, pretty much just a log building with a clapboard siding, and that was the first session was held there. Then they met until they could build a first Capitol building in different locations, different hotels throughout St. Paul until 1855 when that first Capitol building opened.
And what happened to the first Capitol building?
Yeah, that was really a neat little capitol for a territory or the early size of the state of Minnesota as it became a state in 1858. It was a brick and wood building, had a nice little white dome on top of it, wooden dome. And then as the state expanded, as government got larger, they kept adding wings to it and added additional sections to it. So it lost its dome, had a cupola, and then by the 1870s added a couple more extensions to the building, and in 1881 it burned down. So many states have that story as part of their history, and Minnesota also lost the Capitol to a fire.
So the first Capitol building burned down, they built another one. What happened to that one?
Well, that was built on the same location, and that one was had a big turret, kind of a big tower in the center that accommodate the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court. And one of the problems with that, partly because of the haste to replace the burned down Capitol with another building, the ventilation wasn't working very properly, so people who were working there, legislators, were getting sick. The state was still expanding governmental-wise, commissions were being created and so forth, so they needed more space, a larger space to conduct the state government.
Midwestern folks are known for their modesty, and yet behind us we have this incredibly glorious building. How did the legislature decide to go with something so monumental?
Well, this was an important reflection of what was happening in America, and especially in architecture and public buildings. The World's Columbian Exposition of 1893 was a big inspiration for a lot of young architects and city leaders who were going to this World's Fair, and they were being inspired by these white, beautiful Italian Renaissance buildings with columns and domes and colonnades and everything that you would see that would be a classical representation of democracy or government, several hundred years ago. And so they were inspired to build buildings like this. And that was one of the specifications for this building when they sent out the requirements for the competition for architects to submit drawings. They wanted a dome, a fairly prominent dome. They wanted columns, they wanted pediments, things that you would see in these buildings in Europe, and also that were being built all over the United States.
Cass Gilbert was ultimately chosen to be the architect of the building. How did the legislature choose him?
Well, he was selected by the Board of Capital Commissioners, and so they were the group of 7 people who were charged with overseeing the entire project. So they, along with Gilbert, was one of 41 competitors to submit a drawing or drawings with, to follow the specifications required, and based on what they liked about his, flow of the space within the building, the location of the chambers, the architectural elements were all included as part of his design. So he was selected because of that ability to kind of communicate what they thought would be exactly what the state needed.
Rather than downtown St. Paul, why did they choose this site for the Capitol building?
Well, I think by 1890s, the size of the Capitol Square was just too small for what they wanted for this ambitious building project. And part of it is you want a more grandeur space and a grand location for the Capitol. And what was then here is, it's called Wabasha Hill. And so this is a little bit farther from downtown, but still close enough to be connected. And you have really a nice little prominent hill that you can build the Capitol on, so it kind of stands above the rest of St. Paul. So that was one of the main reasons, was more of the geographical location and its appearance, or how it would appear once it was constructed.
How much was originally appropriated, and how much did the state actually spend on the building?
Yeah, the Capitol was a 9-year construction period, and so it cost $4.5 million to do all of that work. And it came actually as built in stages. So the first appropriation was about $2 million, and then they had additional funding that because labor went up, the cost of materials went up, so they needed to go back to the legislature 2 different times to get the amount of money that they needed to make it what you see today.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.